RG Kids, Pastor Chris here with this week's Bible story. It's called Seeds and Trees. Hey, did you guys notice that Miss Alex read a book called Seeds and Trees? If you haven't listened to that yet, make sure you do. It's really fun. All right, so let's get to it. This week on Thursday, we're actually starting a special time of listening and praying and being with God. It's called Lean, Listen, Live. Be sure to ask your parents about it. Since we really want to use that time to listen to God's voice, today we're going to be talking about how seeds are like words in our hearts. Now, the Bible talks about seeds in lots of different ways. There are seeds for growing plants. God talks about how having seeds represents having plenty to eat. He also talks about how seeds teach us how to work hard and expect a harvest, blessings. He also talks about how the offerings we make to church are like seeds that we put in the Lord's hands. He even says that the way we behave and how we treat one another, how we serve one another by doing kind things, how that is also like a seed. Sometimes the Bible talks about our whole life like it's a seed that we can give to God, or maybe that we're afraid to give, so we try and hold on to it really tight for ourselves. God even says that little babies are like little seeds from their parents. That's like you and me. Well, in Matthew 13, Jesus talked a lot about seeds. You can read that whole spot later with your parents, but here's a couple important things that we see Jesus said in there. First, he said that seeds are like God's kingdom truth. Then he said, our hearts and our minds are like the soil that the seed gets planted in. He told us we must get our hearts ready if we want the seeds that he's going to plant inside of us to grow up into strong, fruitful trees. Now, Jesus said that there were 3 kinds of soil that wouldn't grow good seeds, which is like saying it this way. There are 3 kinds of hearts where God's truth won't be able to grow strong in. That might sound a little bit scary to us, but the good thing is, God says we're in control of whether or not we're going to be good soil for God's seed. He talked about 3 different kinds. He said there was the hard roads, there was stony, shallow ground, and then there was thorny places. So let's talk about the first one, the hard roads. This is where we get stuck in our own thinking. We only have one idea and we won't let it go. Jesus says this is stinking thinking. Ugh, like a dirty diaper. Gross, P.U., nasty. God says that when our hearts are like this, his truth tries to come in, but it can't come in there. It just gets scooped away, and it never even gets a chance to start trying to come alive inside of us. Jesus even said it this way, that if we are in that place where we're real stubborn and hard like this, and stinky in our thinking, he said you won't even be able to understand what God is trying to tell you. Then he talked about the stony, shallow ground, and this is where there's really hardly any dirt at all. Those poor seeds can only get a little bit of roots, but then very quickly, because they can't go down deep, the plants just die. I think one of the things Jesus was talking about here is that when we are so busy, just run, and we don't slow down, then when we're like that, there's no earth, there's no ground, there's no place in our hearts to go deep, for God to go deep and take time with us. And so what he shares with us, we just run right past it. We don't even get to see it grow inside of us. In this kind of place, Jesus' truth isn't going to last very long in our hearts. Then the next one is the thorny places. And this happens when we are really scared or angry, and we can't really even hear the things that God is saying to us. When we get scared or angry and selfish, we can be very impatient and not be very good listeners. Have your parents ever said that to you? You're not being a very good listener right now. I need you to be a better listener. Slow down. Don't calm down. And those, you need to listen to me. Have you ever heard that? I've heard that before too. Jesus said that when we're like that, his good words get choked out in our lives. They can't breathe and they can't grow. That's really sad. We want them to breathe and grow and become fruitful trees inside of our hearts for Jesus. And then he talked about the good soil. And good soil means that our hearts and our minds are clean and ready for new ideas from God. It also means that we're calm and we're not rushing around. And this shows God that his words are very important to us and that we want to take the time to hear him well and to do what he says to do. It also means that we're not being selfish or angry and letting fear block our ears so we're not being a good listener. And we know that all of God's seed is good. So we want our soil to be good and ready to receive it, right? Remember what Jesus said about the seed. It's like the kingdom. It's pieces of truth that God wants to put inside of us so they become growing strong and fruitful so we can be living like Jesus. What did he say that seed was like? It was like a mustard seed. And even though a mustard seed is very, very tiny, very, very small, he said it grows up to be a very big tree. Even birds can build nests inside of it. So this tiny, tiny little truth that God shares with you, it might seem small to you, but man, there's a big tree hidden inside of it. And God wants that tree to grow up in us. That's what happened in Jesus' life. He grew. He was a person like we are. He's God, but he's a person just like you and me. And he grew in truth and understanding. He grew and grew and grew. And then we see his life, lots of fruit in his life, right? Well, we want that for us too. If we will clean up our thinking and slow down and not be so rushed and calm ourselves down and be good listeners, if we'll do all of that, we'll be good soil. So when Jesus' truth comes in, like a tiny little mustard seed, it'll grow up inside of us and be a great fruitful tree. And that means we'll be living just like Jesus. And that's it, guys. Remember, take this time to look into your hearts and clean up and slow down and calm down. Give Jesus some extra cuddle time this week and then listen for his voice. And if he shares something with you, go tell your parents and talk to them about it and ask them to help you. Write it down and make it a part of your life. Okay, well, that's it for me. I love you so much, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Is anybody looking? Anybody watching? Let's do some silly dancing together. See you soon.